The Sony ZV1 has been announced. It is going to be shipping at the start of June. And is this camera the second coming of whatever? Anyway, is the Sony ZV1 the camera for you, and should you buy it? Let's find out. My name is Vic Barry. What's going on? How are you? Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for watching all of the videos that I've made about the Sony ZV1. If you're into all things filmmaking and video and fancy some techniques, tips and thoughts, then please consider hitting subscribe towards the end of this video if you find it useful or informative. Now, the Sony ZV1, I'm going to talk about it here. Firstly, I'm going to take a look at the specs really quickly because I think, there's a ton of videos online already reviewing the Sony ZV1. They're all talking about the specs. I'm just going to blaze through them really quickly. But I'm going to talk about what I felt were gimmicks, and are they still gimmicks? This is the One-Touch Bokeh. This is the soft skin filter that they've put in here, and also this product focus gimmick. Now, are these any good, and are they even worth you considering? And also, I'm going to really get in depth about who is this camera aimed for, and should you, most importantly, part with your like $800 to buy this camera. So firstly, let's get into the specs. This will do 4K 24, 4K 30. That's it. It's going to do 4K for what you want. It's got some slow speeds as well. It'll do 1080, 120. It'll do 240, 480, 960. Generally with the Sony cameras, the higher the slow motion, like 960 and 480, unless it's an incredibly well-lit situation, are kind of fairly cropped, low resolution and unusable. 120 and 240. 240 to push is usable. So you got slow motion and you got 4K 30. Now keep in mind, you also got image stabilization in the Sony ZV1. Now what does that mean? It means things are not going to be a little bit jittery if you're out walking about. When you turn on the image stabilization, it's going to help you smooth things out. And then you've got digital stabilization on top of that, which does crop into about a 1.2 crop. And what that means is that 24mm lens equivalent is going to be a little bit tighter, which means you're going to have to really stretch out, or maybe invest in a little bit of a handheld tripod to give you that extra distance between the camera lens and you. So that's kind of the bulk of the specs. The obvious thing then is got a flip out screen versus a flip up screen. Now it doesn't matter because you got to talk to the lens, but some people prefer the flip out versus the flip up. It's got a brand new microphone from Sony, which sounds really good from some of the audio tests that I've heard today. However, if you're behind the camera talking, it sounds really distant and not good. So depending on what you're shooting, you might have to get a little bit creative. However, something like a Saramonic, the SRX1, can rotate really quickly. It's a cheap $25 mic and it works really well. And with the mic socket in the Sony ZV1, happy days. The one big problem I have, and it's a real caveat when it comes to the Sony ZV1, is the battery. See, these, see, Sony NP-BX1. These batteries are all in the RX series, so if you're thinking of upgrading from an RX series and you've probably got a ton of these batteries, the camera will chew through these batteries, especially when you're shooting at 4K or the slow motion modes really quickly. My RX 100 Mark V eats these things up. I know Sony have made some improvements to the thermals and the insides of the camera over the last couple of years. From what I've heard, you're looking at maybe an hour of continuous shooting, which is okay, but be prepared to spend some money on some of these extra batteries. The one thing though I did learn this evening from Gerald Undone, hi Ger, is that the camera, the Sony ZV1, will charge and work continuously with USB power. So I'm shooting this right now on the Sony a6600, and if the battery dies and I plug in a USB power pack, it's not going to work. It's on a trickle charge, so the battery's constantly depleting. However, the Sony ZV1 will work off a USB battery bank flawlessly. As soon as it hits zero, you're ready to go. You don't have to wait for it to charge up. So that's a really positive thing on the continuous power of the Sony ZV1. So that's the specs done, okay? That's the specs. Let me talk about the gimmicks, because every time you hear, oh, one-touch button for background blur, or bokeh as it's affectionately known as, or product showcase, you're like, this is a gimmick, it can't be any good. And even this whole kind of skin softening thing where it's going to smooth out the wrinkles, yeah, thanks Skynet robots, smooth out these wrinkles. The product focus feature, which basically what it allows is, let's say I hold this up, see, the a6600 has no idea what to do. Once you enable this mode on the Sony ZV1, as you can see here, I've grabbed a still or two from iJustine's video. It's incredibly accurate, it's incredibly fast. So if you are showcasing like a battery or a phone or whatever, it works so well. And then the other thing that I thought was going to be a complete and utter gimmick, and it works flawlessly, is this one-touch bokeh. So bokeh, see that there? See that there? Blurry background. Okay, so basically you need a fairly fast lens for this, like f1.8, which the Sony ZV1 is. But given that the size of the sensor is 1 inch, you're always going to struggle to get really good shallow depth of field. So super bokeh, super blur, it's going to be hard to achieve. But this option, which defaults on a button, works, and it works really, really well. Matti Haapoja kind of showed this, and I was blown away by it. I thought this was going to be a gimmick that just would not work well. It works so well. So many YouTubers, or so many people who want to create content, they want to emulate their favorite YouTubers, and there's nothing wrong with that until you find your own style. But that kind of whole blurry background bokeh look, that you can do it now and really achieve it successfully at the touch of a button, takes out the technical aspect. So if you're into the tech side of it, this is not the camera for you. But if you want to achieve that look that you want to emulate and that kind of cinematic film blur, it's all here on a button, which is insanely good. So the gimmicks, with the exception of the skin softening, which gimmick, looks phenomenally good. And I think it's going to be really, really useful for anybody that's starting out and doesn't want to really get involved in the technical side of the camera. Now, who is this aimed for? If you're into f-stop and aperture and shutter rates and ISOs, and you want to get into the numbers and really fully control the camera, well, you can do that in the Sony ZV1. It takes a lot of the guesswork out. With the built-in ND filter, you've got an option to shoot in bright sunlight, so you don't have to be buying step up, step down rings and different ND filters for an interchangeable lens camera. It's all done within the camera. It's about 3 stops down, which is probably more than adequate for enough scenarios if you're shooting in bright daylight. For anybody that just wants to make videos, and here's a really good point, you can concentrate on the story and making the video, and the camera does a lot of the heavy lifting. Keeping in mind, the camera is only a tool. You're the one that's making the story and creating the story, right? So if the video sucks, it's not the camera's fault, it's yours. So you don't really have to be worrying about, oh, you know, have I got a good shallow depth of field? Is it blurry? Is it this? Is it that? The camera's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and it does seem to do a pretty good job of auto exposing for your face, but as a result, it can blow out the highlights a bit more. But these are options that you can turn on and turn off. But it's very much a case of pressing that big and large record button and just shooting your video. The autofocus is insanely good. Sony is some of the best autofocus in the world. And this is on autofocus right now. And I'm just confident that this Sony eye autofocus is tracking my eye and it's just going to work. And that's it. The gimmicks, for the best part, they're not really gimmicks. They're practical and they work. The specs are what they are. I know people are going, there's no 4K 60, but Sony's 1080 120 is really, really good. So we've kind of talked about who it's not aimed at and also who it's aimed at. So if you just want to press go, that's who it's really aimed at. If you're technical, this is probably not a camera that you're going to upgrade to. However, for anybody that's starting out, this is an incredible camera. If you just want to make videos, press record, just go for it. And you have the option of getting a little bit more manual and customizing things. It's just solely focused on making videos. Yeah, it does stills and the stills seem to be pretty good, but if you just want to make videos, this is a really, really good camera. So should you buy it? Am I going to buy it? I got a couple of comments and messages today. Are you going to buy this? I would love, number one, for Sony to send me one to review. I've reached out to them, but as we're a growing YouTube channel, I appreciate that. They probably not. I love Sony stuff. I'm not trying to twist their arm. I genuinely enjoy and love Sony products. I love how their color science, and this is the latest version of the color that they have, and it looks really, really good. So am I going to buy it? To be honest, I'm never really going to take my Sony a6600 out vlogging, simply because it's got too much of a problem at rolling shutter, where things are very kind of jelly when you kind of move the camera left to right. I don't think that gave a really good example of it, but the image stabilization is very bad, and it's more of a studio cam that I'm going to use unless I'm doing it in specific situations. So I'm giving serious consideration to buying the Sony ZV1. I enjoy using my phone to vlog with. Don't get me wrong, the iPhone 11 Pro is amazing and I've made some very good looking videos on it, but I still just enjoy the camera because a phone should be a phone. I just like the camera. I like the look. You can spot iPhone footage a lot of the time. You know, it's a bit too sharp. And I know you can do everything, but just the camera, maybe it's a romantic notion, but there's just something nice about holding a camera in your hand versus holding the phone. So I'm giving serious consideration to the Sony ZV1. I guess the thing that's kind of swaying me really is the stabilization. Even though it's cropped in a little bit, it's so much better than what I can ever achieve without buying a gimbal and a heavy gimbal to run the Sony a6600, which is one of my favorite cameras of all time. The Sony RX100 Mark V. This camera has served me so well. I would hate to put it to pasture, but something like the Sony ZV1 to me makes absolutely perfect sense if you're beginning, if you just want a second camera, and if you don't want to be dragging around a bigger camera and with crappy stabilization. So should you buy it, and this is the best piece of advice I can give you, think about what you want to make. As your career on YouTube or filmmaking grows, you can adapt and buy different cameras and all that kind of stuff. But right now, if you want to get started, yes, there's cheaper options out there. But for bang for your buck and press record and never be worried about whether you're in focus and know that you're achieving a look that you want to get without stressing about it, to me, the Sony ZV1 makes absolutely perfect sense. Think about what you're making. Think about, will you regret buying that Canon or something else? Will you? Will you go, oh, if I just saved an extra 200, 300, 400 bucks, I could have got that. Think about the style of content that you're using. Is there going to be a lot of motion? Do you need stabilization? Would you be better off getting something else? For the price point, I think it's probably still a little bit too pricey. But again, you pay for what you get. That best-in-class autofocus is worthy, I think, alone of your hard-earned cash. The Sony ZV1 so far seems to be it's nearly there. Yeah, it'd be great if they had a slightly wider lens, given the crop factor on the stabilization. The big thing for me, though, the big caveat that I can find really with it is the battery. Those batteries, they're not great, but that continuous power option is okay. Not ideal if you're vlogging. You don't want to be holding the camera and then a battery pack trailing off of it. But you got to do what you got to do, right? Now, speaking of what you got to do, I hope you guys have found some semblance of usefulness or something that's kind of sparked off an idea in your head from watching this video. There's a button here that's going to tell you to subscribe if you find this video useful, and only if you find it useful. Please hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments, are you going to get the Sony ZV1 to start vlogging with? And this video will set you on your way for vlogging. My name is Vic Barry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, don't stop fighting for yourself.